Hey Bub, this is Izzy here, coming to you with another review. That's my impression of Wolverine, take it for what you will. Today's review is based off the 2003 Marvel film, X2, X-Men United, directed by Bryan Singer. In the early 2000s, you have to remember the only Marvel franchises we had as far as live actions was concerned was Spider-Man and X-Men, and they were all self-contained within their own universe. From a cinematic standpoint, I have to say X2, X-Men United really paved the way for what we have been privileged to watch as far as Marvel productions are concerned. Because X2, what Bryan Singer did with that universe, with those characters, I don't believe we'll ever see be done again, just because of how the times were different then, and the director had a lot more creative freedom in order to be able to, from his perspective, faithfully execute the representation of the characters. You have all of your recurring cast returning to this sequel with new characters being introduced, also with a new storyline that really sets the pace and sets the bar for being that much more serious and obviously for what it was going to lead to for future sequels. I always typically tend to stop at this, just because this still, as far as the X-Men film is concerned, is, I know people are going to probably disagree with me on this, but this is still, as amazing as First Class is, as amazing as Days of Future Past and even Logan is, I have to say this is still the greatest X-Men film ever made. This is just, I don't believe anything will ever come close as far as X-Men is concerned. Even though I know the property is owned by Marvel/Disney again, I just simply I cannot believe that we're going to come anything close to this. And if I'm proven wrong in that aspect, then I'll be glad to admit that I'm wrong, but I just don't see this type of film as far as X-Men is happening again. From a storyline standpoint, you have the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants who are forced to band together to fight a threat within the government that is led by William Stryker, who is using his fanatical hatred of mutants and his government connections to eliminate all mutant kind due to a painful, tragic experience that he had with his son, and resulting in the death of his wife. And because of that hate, he knows that he has the connections and the resources to be able to use the government in order to fulfill his path, fulfill his glory into eradicating all mutant kind. And because of that threat, that's what transcends X2, X-Men United into a much more greater stratosphere, is the fact that when it comes to sequels, from my perspective, whether it's, say, The Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, even Marvel, or even the DC universes, when it comes to sequels, you have to be able to establish what made the first one so special, unique, yet still find a way to improve upon that, while also finding a way to continue to transcend into that universe while building that sense of emotion with the characters and the action sequences. From the action perspective, special effects elements, this really, truly, in my opinion, sets the pace as well. It builds the bridge for what allows you to not only be that much more mesmerized by having this comic book element come to life before your eyes, while still maintaining that sense of connection with the characters. And also because it actually is supposed to build the character, and the character development is integrated within those pieces. You simply cannot you don't find yourself being distracted or being taken out the moment due to an unnecessary comedic element. When the action happens here, it serves a story. And when it serves a story, for me, it really manages to focus on what makes the X-Men franchise, in an early X-Men franchise, that much more unique and special. From an actor standpoint, the acting here is just phenomenal. Because when you think about, especially past action films and even early comic book adaptations, I guess the best way to put it is that you don't necessarily think about the acting. You don't necessarily think about the writing, but the acting here is that much more realistic and raw and emotional. And that's what's so different compared to now. Actors and actresses were actually integrating with their environment. They were actually interacting with the set pieces and the set designs, and bumping into walls and falling on the ground and interacting with one another. Whereas now everything is replaced by a giant green and blue screen, completely removing the whole necessary element and having to be that much more realistic. And how they were able to interact with one another in this film, it feels that much more genuine. From a special effects element, I know there's been a lot of fans who didn't necessarily care for the way Bryan Singer captured the action in his early X-Men films, as they felt that is all about the team effort. It's not necessarily about, it was more about the team effort and how he didn't really capture the colorful element of it. But as I mentioned, the action is supposed to serve the story. And when you have action for the sake of action, there are films for that. But when it comes to a story of this magnitude, you simply just can't have action just because you want action. It has to mean something. And once you get to the ending, because I mean there are bits and pieces of hints that are being placed throughout this film as to what it eventually was going to lead to, and it disappoints me, but yet it's beautiful at the same time. Let me focus on the beautiful element. The beautiful element of this film, especially when it pertains to the ending, is what moved me, because I can just remember sitting there with the packed house and me and just having those emotions stirred with me to the point of having my eyes water just because of how painful it was. It's disappointing because you find yourself experiencing what came after. And what I mean by after, I'm not talking about X-Men First Class or X-Men Days of Future Past, Logan, or Apocalypse, but X-Men The Last Stand. What Bryan Singer was leading to as far as this film was concerned, and once you see what was being hinted at and what came after, it left me with such a sour taste in my mouth afterwards, because man, we literally could have had the perfect trilogy. This Bryan Singer could have had the perfect X-Men trilogy by far. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be, and sometimes I find myself just thinking, what if? And the Bryan Singer's X-Men X2 is one of the greatest what ifs as far as Marvel Cinematic adaptations is concerned. And I have to give high praise to the acting performances between Hugh Jackman and James Marsden within that sequence involving Jean Grey, because it's just, despite the antagonistic views of Cyclops and Wolverine, man, they knocked it out of the park with that scene. Just anyone who has watched it knows what I'm talking about, and it still is very moving to this very day. And Nightcrawler's prayer over their wonderful, powerful, painful acting just really moves me emotionally. I can't recommend X2 X-Men United enough. Just absolutely by far the most perfect superhero film of all time. It is up there in the upper echelons as being one of the greatest superhero films ever made. For me, it's Winter Soldier and X-Men 2 X-Men United as being at the top of my list as my favorite superhero films of all time. And also up there with Superman 1978, the movie. That's my review of X2 X-Men United. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have watched it, let me know what you thought about it. Provide a like and provide a comment on my YouTube and my Facebook. If you haven't watched it, please do so. You are doing yourself a disservice by not watching this film. I highly recommend it. That is my review. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Take care, be safe, and I'll be seeing you all again, my friends. Take care. Peace out.